So Ward 4 residents, constituents, we're excited that you're here tonight for the Ward 4 meeting on our proposed zoning amendments. Thank you for being here. And I just wanted to introduce everyone that's on the call. Tony Gross is an at-large counselor. He lives in Ward 4 too, and he's co-hosting with me. And representing the planning board, we have two folks. We have Sean Henry and we have Jane Remsen, who lives in Ward 4. And then Grace Poirier is helping us co-host this on Zoom. So our goal tonight is to begin the meeting by hearing a little bit from Sean Henry. There are about 16 slides, but a lot of them are all together. And he's just going to give us a quick update of where these proposed amendments came from. And then after that, I am going to lead a interactive session with all the participants that are on the call that want to speak. And we're going to ask for a show of hands, and we're going to discuss what you support about these proposed amendments, what you don't support about these proposed amendments, and then why. Tony Gross is going to do the scribing, which I appreciate, Tony. Thank you. And we will just watch for hands and bring people in. Grace Poirier is going to try to make sure that people are respectful of the time commitments, because if we have 25 hands up, we want to try to make sure that people don't speak over 3 minutes. So we will ask that you end when you start to hear that the alarm goes off. So I think it's important that if you've already spoken in 3 or 4 of the other meetings, that if you speak again tonight and you have a residence in Ward 4, that you keep it as brief as possible, because our goal as ward councilors is to hear from the biggest amount of people that we can hear from in our wards. And we're going to be bringing back all of this data to our February 16th P&D meeting. And if questions come up today that are really tough ones, or we just don't have time to answer, we will scribe those as well. And those will all be answered by Greg Catamatore back in our February 16th meeting. So I think we've said everything, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll ask Sean to share your screen, if you would. And
I don't think I'm set up to share, am I? I thought Grace was going to.
Grace will screen them to share them. Terrific. Thank you, Grace. Appreciate it. All right. So Sean Henry, take it away. Thank you.
All right. First, I'll start off with just a little bit of history on these. Back in 2013, the planning board started looking at the Railroad Avenue area to see what sort of zoning changes might be beneficial to that. 2014, we started looking at Main Street and Rogers Street to see what kind of zoning changes might promote some redevelopment along Main and Rogers. Excuse my voice tonight, a little under the weather. Anyway, so from that 2014, we realized we need to do more of an in-depth look at what our zoning and our housing needs are. So we launched the housing production plan. That lasted about 2 years, from 2014 to the end of 2016, where we again did an assessment of our current housing stock, estimation of what housing we're going to need in the future, and from that started the housing production plan implementation working group to actually see what changes we could make in the zoning to effectuate some of those necessary changes we had identified. So if you, and that brings us to today. We have last year forwarded 2 zoning changes from this project to the City Council, our inclusionary zoning ordinance, which was passed last spring, that made some changes to that, which governs the deed restricted affordable housing production. And secondly, an accessory dwelling unit amendment that the council adopted also, that allows for a relatively compact 900 feet or less accessory dwelling unit on a lot that, as long as it's compliant, has to be maintained by the homeowner. It can be rented, but no short-term rentals. The shortest length to rent is 30 days for that. And then this round of amendments actually deals with the other types of zoning, which we felt was sort of constricting the production of housing in Gloucester. So we can move on to the next slide. So basically, I think there was one we just passed, but that's okay, because I just basically talked about what we're, how this is broken up, kind of clarify a few things, talk about the history of two families in Gloucester, the potential for the build out and height in the region. So we can go to the next one. So again, all these proposals came out of the housing production plan, and again, not dealing with capital A, deed restricted affordable housing, but housing that is more affordable for at market rate, lower end market rate for the residents here currently. Currently, our zoning allows for two family by right to some degree across all wards except, or yeah, all districts except for RC 40. There's been some impression that we had still single family zones across the city, but that's been a while in the past since we were a city of single family zones. The HPP, again, as I said, did direct us to address affordable housing, capital A affordable housing, deed restricted. We did that last year. There are other programs that you can find at the Community Development Office, which also assist in making housing more affordable for people. And good to reiterate, there's been some concern that these amendments are being foisted on the city from outside, but these are all locally generated and completely under the control of the planning board. I know there's also been concern about increase in potential production, but because of the change we're recommending in R30, R40, R80, and the potential for RC40, those are the districts where there's really the only increase in the total number of units that are possibly modified beyond what the regulation allows today. And again, just touch on affordable. A lot of people mistake big A affordable for little a affordable. The only big A affordable housing that's certified by HUD, recognized by HUD, is deed restricted affordable housing. And housing that's simply more affordable is not recognized, but again, much needed for our population here. We can go to the next slide. So Gloucester adopted zoning in the 60s and allowed two family residential starting in the 1980s with special permit. It was eased, those requirements were eased over time. 1993 allowed by right new construction and conversions of those. Later in the 90s, 1998, there was a restriction put that still exists, special permit for conversions with an exterior modification. So again, our current ordinance as it stands allows two family by right with new construction, two family by right with tearing down an old structure, rebuilding new, two family by right with modification of the interior of a home. The special permit comes in just for an exterior modification of the existing single family home. And it's important to note again that under the amendment, all of the overlying requirements remain in terms of dimensional requirements for the lots, satisfying off-street parking, satisfying if you're in a septic area, satisfying Title V septic for the two family versus a single family unit, both that's under new construction and modification that would send you to the Board of Health for review of your any existing septic and any modification that you would replacement you need to make. So let's see, we can go again. Next slide. You can see again with these allowances that as we've had, we average about 16 units of two family per year over the last 4 years. This was again pulling the building permits from 2018 through the end of 2021. You'll see the top two lines, conversion 1 to 2 family was 47 units. New two family, just below that was 16 new units. The other two deal with 3 family creation, either through conversion from an existing 1 or 2 family, 2, 3, and you see we've hit 19 of those in the last 19 units of those in the last 4 years. And again, we mentioned 2-family or 3-family rather, because one of the amendments changes a special permit use in R5 district to a by right allowance, as long as, again, the lot and the existing structure meet all other zoning regulations in terms of off-street parking, septic, sewer, all those other issues still play out and would restrict any by right use for those. Go to the next slide. So here, this is the potential increase in units by district when you're talking about potential 2-family, which is all of the districts, and potential 3-family, which is limited in this case just to R5, which is why you see the dramatic increase in the R5 district. That's assuming that all available units that, again, potentially comply with all overriding zoning would choose to convert their existing single or 2-family home to a 3-family. So you get a significant increase in there. Both are sort of mid-sized districts, R10, R20. You see there's no increase in the potential production of units in either of those districts. That's because, again, as I explained, 2-family is allowed by right if you're building new, tearing down an existing structure, building new, or modifying by internal modification. The only addition we're making to this is removing that special permit for converting an existing single-family home to a 2-family through an external modification. And you see on our larger lots, larger districts, R30, R40, R80, it's relatively modest increase in all those. 43 units in R30, potential 54 units in R40, and just 18 in R80. So not a substantial increase in those larger districts. We can go on to the next one. And so again, as I mentioned, our zoning didn't come into place, wasn't adopted until the late 1960s. So Gloucester was built up over hundreds of years prior to that. So in terms of compliant lots, our percentages are actually pretty low, spread across the city. On average, citywide, our compliant lots are total less than 20%. And R10, you've got about 25% that are compliant, R20, 17%, R30, 11.5%, 27% in R40, only 15 or less than 15% in R80. And again, only 11 of those lots in RC40 are compliant. So this dramatically limits the potential for by right uses of any of these amendments in any of those districts, because any exercise of the 2-family by right or the 3-family conversion only goes forward if both the lot and any existing structure are 100% compliant with the overriding zoning in those districts. We can go to the next. And this again, in our R5 district, we have total just shy of 2,200 lots. Less than 800 of those are compliant. It's actually about 36% of the lots there are compliant. You see the numbers that would be available to go from 1 to 3-family conversion, 2 to 3-family conversion. We've got 5 empty lots that could be build 3 new. So again, if these numbers are only if everyone, current homeowner, decides to actually increase from a single or 2-family home to a 3-family home, which is highly unlikely, particularly when you look at our history of 2- and 3-family creation. Total, we're only averaging right around 20 units per year split between those 2 uses. And again, both with R5 and going back to the other districts, the overriding considerations for parking, Title V, adequate sewer, placement of the existing structure on lot, meeting all those dimensional requirements, any deed restrictions or easements would prevent exercise of a by right use for any of these. And go to the next one. So I won't bore you by reading through this. I would encourage you to do a screenshot or download the PDF. This is the definition of how we determine building height in the city. Again, I'll say that the regarding height, our zoning wasn't adopted until the late 1960s. Through 1982, there was no restriction on heights at all in zoning. In 1982, they passed a new ordinance that placed the 60-foot maximum height limit on multifamily and business structures, commercial structures, but continued forward with no restriction on residential height for, let's see, about 4 years, when in 85 or 86, 35 feet was adopted as the standard height for residential uses throughout the city. That was dropped back down to 30 feet in roughly 87 or 88. And we're saying roughly here because our record keeping isn't the best. Greg Catamatore, our city planner, has been resorting to going through manually through the former minutes of both the planning board and city council that he can find and try to ferret out exactly when some of these things happen. But the record is spotty. And so he has to jump from minutes to minutes. In some cases, you can actually see the amendment that was proposed. Otherwise, it's just sort of the minutes of the meeting transcribing the conversation that took place. So again, 87 was when the current residential height of 30 feet was established. Later in 1999, 2000, when the comprehensive plan, Plan 2000, was being worked on, there was an attempt to establish, bring the heights up to the standards of 35, 40, 45 feet. That went back and forth for a bit, and ultimately that didn't move forward, and the 30 and 40 foot heights that we currently have remained in place. So that's the history there. Next slide. And this is sort of our regional plot of what our neighbors around us allow for maximum building height. Unfortunately, shades of pink are pretty difficult to distinguish, but basically put together a brief list. Manchester, Essex, Beverly, Salem, Newbury are all 35 foot by right height. Newburyport and Manchester by the Sea have mixed heights of 30 and 35 feet. And then if you look to our neighbors down on Cape Cod, Bourne, Chatham, Dennis, Falmouth, Mashpee, and Sandwich are all at 35 feet. So, and the standard really across the state is 35 feet for the most part. So we'll go to the next one. So this is a very sort of bullet point description of what the zoning amendments are. There are actually nine amendments, but of those nine, three of those are actually changes in footnotes that basically refer back to the main change in the zoning ordinance itself. So amendment number 1 is bringing uniformity to the zoning ordinance section 2.3.1, which is deals with creation of two families. So what we've done there is to remove the ZBA special permit requirement for conversion from 1 to 2 family with exterior modifications, treating that use the same way we treat 2 family new construction or modification internally. And this would bring us into compliance with Mass General Law 40A Section 4, which mandates that you treat the same use the same in each district. So you could make the argument that we could treat 2 family conversions differently between R10 and R20, but you can't treat them differently within R10. The same, regardless of the path you get there, a 2 family is a 2 family. So this would bring us in compliance with that. Number 2 deals with the 3 family conversion or new construction I mentioned in Ward 5. It also adds a possible use through ZBA special permit in R30, which is principally in Magnolia. Number 3 is dealing specifically with per unit sizes in our larger districts, R80, R40, R30. At some point in the past, an amendment was made to actually require the doubling of the minimum lot size in each of those districts, so that 80,000 feet required 160,000 square feet to support a two-family application. On R40, you jump from 40 to 80,000 square feet, R30, 30 to 60,000. What this amendment does is basically bring those down to 50% of lot size, so that basically you could build a two-family home on any of those lot sizes, the standard size lot. It doesn't reduce the lot size in any way. It's just reducing the per unit minimum to allow a two-family on those standard size lots. All right, number 4 is our current zoning establishes a minimum frontage and then expands the minimum lot width, typically in each district, to a bigger size. You can see, I won't read through all of them, but the minimum lot width for our minimum frontage for R80, R40 is 100 feet. Currently, it requires a minimum lot width is 150. So you have this little pregnant bump in that. So we've reduced that down so that the minimum lot width corresponds to the minimum frontage in each of those. And again, I encourage you to download the document so you have this in front of you. But basically, it just brings that lot width requirement in line with the lot frontage. But again, total square feet required remains the same in each of those. And let's see, the building height, again, proposed to go from the current 30 feet up to 35 for 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings. That would be across all residential zones, and then CCD, CB, and VB districts. And the final one focuses on the CCD and CB districts, which are Main Street and the upland side of Rogers Street. That's CB, and then CCD is the area immediately surrounding City Hall. And so we propose in those districts, boosting the height to 45 feet to facilitate the potential development of some mixed-use residential, particularly on Main Street. As everyone knows, we've got a couple of large empty buildings, commercial buildings, that would be great to actually see some new life put into. And so that was what we did there. So that's, I think, hopefully I made my 20 minutes, Val.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Sean. Would you just screen through these last few slides just very quickly? Grace, for me, that would be great. So everyone, these are the 9 amendments as they stood when the planning board made these recommendations to the city council in late December. They sent us this, and these were all the amendments that were made. So just screen up. This is in the document. It will be on the Zoom call. You'll be able to see it again tomorrow. All the documents are now on our city council website, thanks to Ryan Knowles and IT. It's single shop shopping. So every single stop shopping, did I say that correctly? Anyway, everything is there for you to see on one website. It's really helpful. And then the last document, if you would just go to that. Yeah, so this is a summary of all the information that is available to everybody on one location. And it gives you links to everything, including the remote ward meetings that will be on Zoom the day after. And all of these meetings are being scribed and reported back to P&D. So anyway, so let's move on, and I'm going to ask Jane Remsen. She said about 3 minutes of points that she would like to make. So Grace, if you can get rid of the screen, and great. So all back. So Jane, in terms of the things that you'd like to just share after, and thank you, Sean, for your great presentation. Appreciated. What are the things that you think are important for people to
Right.
be?
I just wanted to go over quickly these terms that we keep using and make sure we're all on the same page. So we keep saying as of right and special permit, and I'm not sure everybody knows what that means. So as of right means that if you want to build a single family house or a two-family house or convert a single family to a two-family, you can do that as of right, which means you just basically go to the building inspector, and if you comply with all of the zoning regulations and the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission and all of that, you can get a building permit to do what you want. If you're in a situation where you need to go for a special permit, that means you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is a board that reviews your situation and takes a number of other factors into account. The Zoning Board of Appeals, just because you're going to get a special permit, doesn't mean you can't do it. The Zoning Board of Appeals basically can't tell you that you can't do it. The only thing the Zoning Board of Appeals does, not the only thing, but what they do is potentially create a bunch of conditions around which you can do your project. And they could certainly make your conditions so onerous that you wouldn't want to do your project, and then you wouldn't. But it's an extra review process. It's not saying that it's not allowed. So in our current case, right now, as zoning stands, you can convert a one family to a two family in all districts except for R40 as of right, as long as you don't make any changes to the exterior of the building. And you can build a new two family as of right, as long as you don't make build a new two family as of right. So the only thing that you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for is if you make exterior changes, in which case it's easier to tear that building down and create a new one, because you can do that one as of right. The other thing I want to clarify is this term affordable. Sean mentioned it, but when we talk about affordable housing in conjunction with this zoning proposed changes, we are simply using affordable as an adjective. We are not talking about the affordable units that you have to jump through hoops and do an incredibly complicated calculation to, qualify for. We are saying that, if you're looking for a two-bedroom apartment, you hope it's $2,000 instead of $2,500, and $2,000 is more affordable than $2,500. And I think that the idea is that if we're allowed to create more easily create two-family houses, you add smaller units, you add to the supply of smaller units in Gloucester, which would take the pressure off the high price of smaller units. And if you're looking for a two-bedroom apartment, it might be easier to find. So that is the only way we are using this term affordable. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jane. I wanted to recognize a couple of counselors that are listening in. Jeff Worthley at large, Jason Groh at large, who's also chair of P&D, and Dave Rosen on the planning board is also on the call, and he is a Ward 4 resident. So welcome. And former council president Paul Lumberg is on the call as well. We have 100 people on our call right now. So what I'd like to do right now is start to just hear from all of you. And so if you could raise your hand, and what we'd like to comment on is what you support, what you don't support, and why. And Tony has offered to take notes, and we're going to be scribing them as best as possible and bringing it back to P&D. So let's begin. So now we have 101 participants. So if you'd like to speak, we'd ask you come on, and we'll bring you into the call. And if you can just introduce your name and address, that would be great. And if you are not in Ward 4, I'm going to ask you to yield the floor to the folks that are in Ward 4. And if we have time at the end of the meeting, we will certainly entertain you. But with 101 people, I think we're going to have a pretty full conversation. So so I don't see any hands. Do you see any hands, Grace? Tony?
We have someone named Ellie.
12 hands.
Okay, so Ellie's brought in. Ellie, would you introduce yourself, your full name and address, and welcome. 3 minutes, and Grace is going to keep track of the time, just so we can make sure we share the time with everyone. So welcome. Thank you. Can you unmute yourself, Ellie? You can unmute yourself if on the bottom of your screen, typically. You see a little mute button. Just hit it. Grace, do you have any suggestions for somebody that is on mute and hasn't unmuted?
I think it might be *6 if they're on a handheld device.
Okay, Ellie, would you try to hit *6? Or even *9? Okay, Ellie, we're going to ask you to come back, and we'd really like to hear from you. So let's bring someone else in. Sorry about that. Some of the challenges of Zoom is once in a while we have a technology challenge. Okay, so we're back, and let's see. Show of hands. We have 17 people that have their hands up.
I just pulled in Carol.
Okay, Carol, would you introduce yourself and your address? Thank you, Carol Babson. Can you unmute yourself, Carol? There you go.
I did not have my hand up.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No.
All right, so we will bring you back out of the meeting, but thank you for being here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Grace. Ed King, maybe? Do you have Ed at the top of the screen?
Yeah, I have a different order than you have, so I'm just gonna go
I'll let you
in
take
order.
care
Okay.
of it, so you can bring them in. Okay, it's Val Nelson. I know Val knows how to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, Val, for these meetings and the opportunity to speak. So I have something
Address, please, Val.
exciting.
Val,
Sorry, Tony?
Address, please.
Oh, 7 Sunset Point Road. I'm a Ward 4 resident
Thank
of
you.
Lanesville. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I have too much, I can submit in writing, but I would like to state my views in opposition to all the proposed amendments.
Okay.
After spending time with them in recent months, I've come to see how disconnected they are from our guiding documents, in particular our community development plan from 2001 and our housing production plan from 2017. Not only are these proposed amendments untethered from these plans, but their effect would accelerate trends in the wrong direction, specifically in furthering changes to the character of our neighborhoods, in overstressing our infrastructure and natural systems, and in building of more expensive housing rather than affordable housing. As former planning board chair Jack Clark has been writing in the last couple of years, there is a proper transition from master planning done by the people that expresses their values and recommendations, and subsequently on to zoning provisions that follow and other investments that flow. Our master plan is 20 years old. In many discussions in Lanesville I've been a part of, where we're concerned about affordable housing and overdevelopment, I have not heard any of these specific proposals as solutions to our problems. I will get into detail. A few points about why these amendments would lead us in the wrong direction. First, on the by right height. In our area specifically, from 30 feet to 35 feet. I oppose this provision because it is not appropriate for coastal housing that we have along the river and Ipswich Bay and Annisquam up from Grant Circle. We hug the coastline in just a few streets, and the North Gloucester Woods and Dogtown are undeveloped. I want to say that what the city has put forward, including this evening, is not properly reflecting what other coastal communities have been doing. Rockport is at 30 feet. All these other communities in the map, they may have 35 feet, but they also have 2.5-story limitations, as in Manchester. Marblehead is a coastal zone at 30 feet. I keep submitting this, but it's important to us that accurate representation of what other coastal communities are doing. And the point is that those coastal communities recognize the importance and views. It has also been represented by the city that we have no views in our current ordinance, and that is simply not accurate. In order to go for a height exception, views are mentioned. So this is, I oppose that by right, and I would appreciate if accurate statements were made by the city. Secondly, I oppose the implications to open up most of our restrictions on two-family construction.
Val, I hate to tell you this, but there are like so many people with hands raised. Can you wrap up in the next 15 minutes?
This is the central speculation by the city is that these will be affordable units. Those who live here in the neighborhoods know from our experience that these will not be affordable units, and they will lead us in the wrong direction as far as what our neighborhood values are. So we need to go back again to talking to the people about what we're living with these days, what our values are, and do a new master plan. I recommend you table all of this. It is untethered from the guiding documents of our own city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Val. Appreciate it. Okay, Grace, bring in someone new. Thank you. Tom Mantle. Hi, Tom. Introduce yourself and your address.
Good evening, Val, Tony, councilors, Jane and Sean. Tom Mantle, 1037 Washington Street. I am undecided on being in favor or not in favor of the proposed ordinance. I think Val has made some good points. I do have a couple of clarifying questions that I would like to ask. So Sean, do I understand from your graph that the potential build out in the R20 district, which is Lanesville, is right now is 0 because the potential units have already been developed? Is that a correct understanding of the point you were making in that graph? R10 and R20.
Right. Do you want me to answer that, Val? Or
Yeah, so Jane, either one.
basically, it's
Familiar.
not 0, it's 0 increase. That the 960 units would be, again, potential if everyone has a single family home or a conforming lot in either R10 or R20
Okay,
desired
so
to create a two-family home.
I think then that the graph is misleading. You ought to put it in terms of current and potential and show what the potential development might be for the impact. But the slide says potential impact, and the potential impact is listed as 0, which I think is it's easy to misconstrue that, and I would offer that. The other question I had was about the maximum height, and it's really twofold. The increase in 35 to 35 feet by right does not include any coastal restrictions that are mandated to put structures up on stilts to a certain height above the high tide line. Is that correct?
Jane, would you answer that one? Because I know that that's one that
That's,
you're.
yep, that's correct.
Okay, so the second question about the height is right now you have 30 feet by right. If it goes to 35 feet by right and somebody wants to take it beyond 35 feet, who is what body is the authority for granting that permission? Is it still the Zoning Board of Appeals, which would be the next step, or would it have to go to the city council as a special permit? It would have to go to the
Val is
I see
nodding.
that-
City council.
Tom, it is the
okay.
city council for a special permit.
Well, okay. But the ZBA had authority over granting a variance to 35 feet from 30, right?
That is correct.
So now the ZBA is not, if you want to go over 35 feet, it's one more step, not 2. Right?
It would be one step either way. If you're going from 30 to 35 feet, you always went to the ZBA. If you're going beyond 35 feet, you had to go to the city council.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Thank you, Tom, for being on the call. Appreciate it. Okay. Grace, thank you.
Sorry, counselor, I'm trying to turn the alarm off. I'll pull the next person in.
Is that the alarm on your phone?
No, it's the alarm on my computer. I'm trying to get it off. Sorry.
Oh my God. Grace, can you bring in a person and put yourself on mute? Would that work?
Hi.
Hi, Roberta.
Hi. I'm going. All right. Can you hear me?
You can.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Roberta. You can, I know your street, but you can tell us all. Thank you. Go ahead, Roberta.
Dialing.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
You're already on.
Roberta, we can hear you. So you don't need to be dialing.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, press you have joined the meeting as an attendee and will be muted throughout the meeting.
Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You can, yeah, we're getting some interference, but see if you can.
Okay,
talk.
I apologize for the phone interference. I'm just gonna make it very quick.
Can I have your
I
address?
know myself and a lot of people in R40 and in R80, we purchased in
Your
these
address.
larger lot size areas because we love the woods and we love the privacy. And part of me is concerned that having two family structures are going to change the character of R40 and R80 parcels and potentially devalue our property as well. I don't want to see that happen. I am thankful, actually, that Ward 4-2 has the step system because due to constraint on throughput on the main line, that should deter a lot of this potential for adding additional structures and units in this district. I'm also concerned about the height. A lot of people in this area with ocean views, to change something to 35 feet might mean it might mean that a neighbor wants to do 35 feet and block somebody else's view. It just opens a can of worms in a lot of petitions to the city, I think, if that height limit is increased in these residential areas. That's all I have to say. I just would like to not see R40, R80 character changed and population density changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Roberta, can you remind us what number Revere Street you're on?
Oh, pardon me. I'm 43 Revere Street.
Terrific.
Thank you.
I
Jane
just-
Reps would like to.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to remind everybody that in R40 and R80, two family is already allowed as of right. And you need to go get a special permit if you convert a one family to a two family and make changes to the exterior. And I misspoke before. I'd said R40, but I meant RC40 where it wasn't allowed. And I don't believe we have any RC40 districts in Ward 4.
Right. I think we have down in Magnolia and downtown, Sean, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So two family is already allowed as of right with no changes to the zoning in R40 and R80.
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's take the next person. Ed King, how are you?
Good. Ed King, 8 Langsford Street. And I want to start by speaking in opposition to the 35-foot expansion of the maximum height. I'm going to start with single-family homes. We talked about how bigger homes drive costs up. Allowing bigger single-family homes seems contrary to the goals that were set forward in the presentation and all along. I'm not opposed to some of the accommodations for smaller, some of the proposals. I think that's what we need to go towards, is more smaller. I know Val, you talked about tiny houses for years, and I think this opens up some opportunity for that, which I think is really intriguing, particularly if it's done within the character of the neighborhood. I also want to speak about larger homes on the coast and speak in opposition to coastal, particularly FEMA flood zones and the immediate coastline. Someone mentioned earlier about views. I think one of the things we all enjoy is vistas. And what we are talking about is taking away from the general public. And what we are also talking about is not an area, it's probably the last place in Gloucester that affordable homes will be built. A waterfront affordable home is an oxymoron. It will never occur. To be changing our regulations to allow more bigger homes right on the coast doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for environmental reasons. We know what's going on with the environment. We know the risks are increasing. Greg Catamatori told us that expanding to 35 feet will result in more building in FEMA flood zones. We know this, it's a fact. He also told us that the household size in Gloucester is shrinking. Why do we need bigger single family homes? I don't think we do. I think that there's significant refinement, adjustment that needs to be made for the plan for it to work. Finally, I want to talk about special permits. I'm not talking about special permits that require city council approval. I'm talking about ZBA special permits. It is a much lower bar to have, and I believe that you should take a strong look at ZBA special permits and look to moving those towards variances and allowing more oversight, a greater burden on the builder or the owner to prove their hardship, and really that I believe is an important part of this as well. Finally, supply versus demand. Greg had told us, build it and they will come. As much as we build, they will come and fill it. So building small, I'm all for, but more is not going to necessarily lower the cost of housing in Gloucester. People want to be here and they will continue to want to be here. That's my points. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ed. Appreciate it. Oh, Bud's here.
Hi, Val.
How are you? Nice to see you.
It's Bud Riss. I'm at 44 River Road in Annisquam, and I want to speak in favor of this. I like the small A approach as Jane described it, and seeing if we can use the market to bring the price of housing down by creating multifamily units. I do want to join, though, in the chorus of, do we really want to, can we somehow not allow that to happen along the water's edge, which is the last place where we should be increasing density, knowing that the ocean's going to rise and we're going to have more vulnerability in the future. So with that one exception, though, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Great. Thank you so much, Bud.
Welcome.
See you on the water. Damon, nice to hear from you, Damon. Would you introduce yourself and your address? That would be great.
My name is Damon Cummings. I live at 1063 Washington Street. That's in Lanesville. It's Ward 4. I'm here to tell city councilors, and particularly my ward councilor, who I can see, my concerns, not to ask questions. I will address potential impacts here in Ward 4, where I live and own a two-family in addition to our home. Other areas of the city, such as Governor's Hill downtown, where my grandmother lived, and Bass Rocks, where my parents lived, are impacted in very different ways from here. I think neighbors should have a chance to weigh in on individual proposals like increases in building height or reductions in lot size. Sometimes it's not important. Sometimes it is very important. As for my specific concerns, number one, I'm totally opposed to increasing allowable by right building heights, not only here in Lanesville and Bayview, but along the Annisquam and Mill Rivers. In Riverdale, houses are built in layers up the slopes, looking over or around buildings closer to the shore. Neighbors should be allowed to weigh in on a view blocking or solar power hindering or shadowing construction proposal. I have the same concern, although less so, about the lot size requirement. Moreover, I do not buy the need to raise height to allow full-size buildings on raised pilings in flood or probable wave damage areas. We should be thinking managed retreat or new construction elsewhere, not building new homes on stilts. I think that's a terrible mistake and certainly not an excuse for putting your house higher in front of the house behind you. Number two, I'm not expecting an increase in moderate income housing, and certainly no opportunity for low income families in Ward 4 resulting from these amendments. The ZBA has been helpful in allowing in-law and other needed expansions over the years. I think if neighbors are impacted negatively, they should be able to make their case. In other words, don't do it by right. This proposal allows the investors who fill my mailbox and my phone with offers to buy my houses, kick the families out, raise rents and the number of units to just do that. We are not talking capital A or lower A. We're talking Discover Gloucester affordable. In summary, I do not think these amendments wise, particularly given the state government mission to increase housing beyond the Boston area. Our roads, parking, and water supplies would be stressed even if the amendments work as they are intended to work, and I don't think they will. Thank you. I've got to get back to my family.
Thank you, Damon. It's nice to hear from you. Ed Shokir, another one of my neighbors. Would you introduce yourself and your address? Welcome.
Sure, thanks. My name's Ed Shokir. My family and I live at 717 Washington Street. And I bring to this discussion my perspective as a Gloucester resident and as a professional city planner. As a resident, I fully support increasing Gloucester's housing supply. As a planner, I'm 100% opposed to 3 of the proposed amendments, specifically the ones that amendment that removes a special permit requirement for 2-family conversions, that removes the requirement that lot sizes be doubled for 2-family conversions in several of the districts, and that increase and the increase of residential height from 30 to 35 feet. The first 2 amendments run counter to widely accepted smart growth city planning principles. Smart growth encourages the development of new housing in and around development nodes that include walkable access to transit, both bus and rail, as well as nearby shops, restaurants, and services. And examples such places include downtown, Gloucester Crossing, village centers, and other development nodes identified in the city's comprehensive plan. The 1 to 2 family zoning amendments promote more car-based trips, more traffic, more air pollution, more potential for vehicle accidents, and increased activity and noise on lots that are now primarily single family lots. This is especially true for the city's 2 largest single family zoning districts of R10 and R20, where over 65% of the city's residential lots are located. In the recent presentations that have taken place, I've heard 2 reasons for making these changes that are particularly troubling as a planner. The first is that the changes have to take place for the sake of zoning uniformity. The second is that the number of single-family houses that will be converted to two-families is not really that many. The uniformity argument is just plain wrong. In fact, it's the proposed zoning changes that run counter to the principles of zoning uniformity. With respect to the city's primarily single-family residential districts, R10 and R20, again, where 65% of housing lots are located, the zoning ordinance defines these districts as districts intended to accommodate single-family residential development, and where appropriate, two-family and multifamily development. In zoning and land use law, it's the ordinance text that defines and sets the uniform permitted use in a district. And in R10 and R20, that uniform use is set by your current zoning, our current zoning, as single family. But it does allow for exceptions. It says where appropriate, two-family and multifamily housing may be allowed. And some years ago, the council took steps to define what it means about where appropriate. And it amended the zoning law to allow for two-family units to be built on a small number of vacant lots that are still left, or if a single-family houses was converted to a two-family, but didn't increase in size. So it allowed for those exceptions. But here's the flaw. The city planning board is now making the case that because the city allows these exceptions for property owners in these districts to build two-family houses on vacant land, or to knock down their existing home so the property is deemed vacant, and then build a two-family home from scratch, or that they can convert their single-family home to a full two-family so long as it remains the same size, that these exceptions should become the general rule. In other words, by removing the special permit requirement for converting a single family to a two-family house in these districts, then for the reasons of zoning uniformity, the city must also redefine its zoning ordinance for districts R10 and 20 to read districts intended to accommodate single and two-family residential development, and where appropriate, multifamily development. And it hasn't done that. The second troubling argument is that the number of single-family houses that will be converted to two families are not really that many, to which I ask, are you sure? As a planner, I find it difficult to fully appreciate what might happen 10, 20, or 50 years from now when I'm wearing my here and now glasses and not those elusive pair of very different tomorrow glasses that I don't have a prescription for today. What I find particularly concerning is what might happen to the 60,000 non-conforming housing lots in Gloucester's two largest single-family residential districts, 10 and 20. If the special permit requirement is removed, proposed 1 and 2 family conversions would go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. But because zoning will have been amended to allow single-family to two-family units in districts 10 and 20, it takes off the table that all-important factor of impact on neighborhood character that abutters can raise for consideration. It's saying it's allowed. So that's just one more. So you're opening up the floodgates, or opening up, I don't know about floodgates, but a lot of houses to now go before Zoning Board of Appeals. Lastly, on the 30 to 35 feet, I live looking at the water. I've got 4 houses in front of me. If they were to be built higher than they are now, I would lose a lot of the view of my water. I also want to say that Gloucester is in good company by having 30-foot height limits. Many communities, especially coastal communities, especially some of the most desirable, notable seaside communities, have it as 30 or less. Newburyport is 30, Hyannis, Orleans, Plymouth, Newport, Rhode Island, Carmel by the Sea in California is limited to 24 feet. San Diego is limited to 30 feet. So it's not uncommon. So to hold us up to a whole bunch of
Time, Ed.
Ed,
Time.
we
Okay.
have to, we've
So-
got to score, Ed, but thank you. If you have additional information, please send it to Joanne Sinos and she'll
Well-
share it with.
So
Council. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Jane.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify again that according to current zoning, conversion from one family to two family is allowed in all the residential districts, as long as the two family stays within the shell of the building or you build a new family. The only time under current zoning that you have to go to the zoning board of appeals is if you make a change to the exterior of the building in your conversion to two family process.
Thank you, Jane. So we have 100 people on the call, and right now we have a dozen hands raised. So if you've already spoken at possibly 3 of the other ward meetings, we understand what your issues are. Please try to let the people that haven't spoken have an opportunity to speak so we can share the floor. Thank you. Lyle Bell, would you introduce yourself and tell us your address? And you have up to 3 minutes to share your thoughts with us. Thank you. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you. You're unmuted.
Okay,
Name
no,
and
I'm going to
address.
leave my time to someone else. My questions have pretty much been discussed, although I do have big concerns about the 35 height change there. I think we should leave it at 30, but I'll leave my
Okay.
time for others. Thank you. Oh, it's Butch Roth, 1054 Rear Washington Street.
Oh, great. Nice to hear from you, Butch. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hi, Val. Hi, Tony.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sib Wright, the former head of the ZBA. So good to see you or hear from you, Sib. Would you introduce yourself and your address? That would be great.
Yeah, sure. Sib Wright. My address is 12 Rear Sunset Point Road. It's clear that the 3 minutes that I'm allotted really won't do it. So I'm going to write a letter to try to straighten a couple of things out. I just have there are more questions than anything, so I don't go off half-cocked in this letter, which by and large is in opposition, although not totally. And I wish Greg were here, because I think this is a Greg kind of question. As you may know, Valerie, and possibly Tony as well, we have a kind of a funny special status up here in Gloucester. A number of the streets where zoning was increased, minimum zoning because of the sewer was increased from 10 to 20 feet. So we typically, officially, we're in minimum lot size is 20, but many of the houses up here are allowed to use at least the setback requirements of the earlier 10,000 foot zoning requirement. So the question is, what are we going to be required of in terms of a minimum? If we were to go with 3 family, for example, what are we obliged to do to come to 20,000 square feet or to the 10,000 exception that was made for us? Very technical issue. It involves a lot of people in North Gloucester. There's pages and pages of exceptions to the 20,000 square foot requirement. And I don't know if any of you know the answer to that, but that certainly is something that's going to have to be looked at if you're serious about increasing zoning or decreasing the minimum size per unit. Because none of us, even though we're in zone 20, R20, are 20 homes. They are 10 homes. I live in a 10,000 square foot lot, as well as a whole bunch of other people. And City Council decided years ago that we should be given a break with respect to setbacks anyway. So how is that break going to be, if at all, moved forward to the plans that you are making. Greg probably has already wrestled with this if you haven't, but that's something for you folks to look at.
So what I'd love you to do is send me an email with the specific question, and I will make sure that we address it at the P&D
Okay.
meeting.
But
That
let me
would-
keep going. These are quickies. Jane,
Okay.
it's good to see you back in action again. I was looking at the pictures on your wall and trying to pick out John. I'm sure he's in there somewhere.
He's right there.
All right, good. You said, I was surprised to hear this, that you made the point that affordable housing, as we all know it, is not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's a little cheaper. And if you're going to say that, I think you need to define what you mean by a little cheaper, because just affordable means different things to
To
different
different
people.
people, 100%.
Well, that definitely has to be, if you're going to make that one of the keystones of your argument, you should say, well, we're thinking of teachers and firemen, or whatever you want to say, but you got to say something. Otherwise, it's just total confusion.
Agreed. Understood.
The third thing, well, actually, I'm going to leave this to my letter because everything gets complicated, and I really salute you guys for struggling with this stuff. We've inherited a 300 or 400-year-old community, and it doesn't partake of the thought through stuff that a lot of communities have to deal with. So good luck on it, and I will definitely be writing you on these issues. Thank you.
so much, Seb. It's nice to hear from you. Thank you for
Yep.
your input.
Thanks, Seb.
We now have 95 people, and we've got 10 people with their hands raised.
Hi, Val. Am I on? Hi, thank you, Val, for accommodating that. Patty Page, 3 Title Cove Way. I appreciate the opportunity here. We hear about these mechanisms are allowed. It's just a little change of process, but that change of process removes the special permits and the permitting and the approvals, which also precludes the abutters' rights in the process. So the by right mechanisms really affect the smaller lot districts a lot more than the larger lot districts. To have a 2-family on a 1 or 2 acre lot isn't anywhere near as onerous as getting a 3-family on an R10. I would be not in favor of motion 1. I'd be against that in the R5 and the R10 districts, 3 families by right. I would be against motion 2, the portion of the 3-family by right in R5. I would be in favor of motion 3. I understand how to reduce the lot sizes in 80, 40, and 30 would be a reasonable adjustment. A 2-family by right on a 2 acre lot doesn't seem to be a disadvantage to the abutters. Number 5, the height, 35 feet in R5 and R10. I would not be in favor of that. Particularly motion 7, 45 feet by right in those downtown commercial districts. I would definitely be opposed to that. I understand what Main Street is on average, but when state overlay zoning is introduced and comes in, that will be a 60-foot height with a special permit in those areas. And that's the underpinning for that. So I'd be firmly against that. Motion 9, I'd be against the ZBA special permit allows for the over 35 foot height and the 45 foot height. So again, it sets up that mechanism for those smaller lot districts to get higher and denser. And those are the critical districts because that's where that's the tighter it is, the more impact it has in your quality of life, your downtown characters. Your historic districts will have no protections in your historic districts, no parking limitations downtown with state mandated zoning overlays. You've got to put that on the table here, that those are the districts that will be most impacted. So 1, 2, 5, 7, and 9, I would hope you'd vote against, at least those sections that I mentioned. I would be in favor of motion 3. I appreciate that. Thank you, Val. And
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. Jane has something to comment on. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jane.
I just want to clarify, this has been mentioned 2 times, that the phrase reducing lot size, there is no proposal to reduce zoning lot size. The proposal is to change the requirement that if you build a 2-family, you have to have twice the normal amount of land that you would if you built a single family. We're proposing that if you build a 2-family, that the requirement is the same as the lot size in your zone. So there is no proposal to reduce lot size.
Thank you, Jane. We have Deb. Deb, would you introduce yourself, your last name and address? And you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
I'm Paula Parsons. Deb is in the kitchen cooking.
Okay.
I
Can you-
live at 8 Thurston Lane.
Okay, great.
Deb is here if she has anything to say, but we live at the bottom of Thurston Lane. And I encourage everyone to take a ride by 70 Thurston Point Road and view what is happening there. It was a very small cottage that was torn down by the owner. She's building it now. No one's occupying it at the time. She's going to get, she's going in front of the appeals board now to get it to be allowed as a 2-family. And the fact is that before that was even granted, the 2 heating systems are in, the 2 meters are in, everything is in. And it's a postage stamp and it is gigantic. And the 2nd floor is supposed to be a 2-bedroom. And if it happens to be a family with 2 teenage children that each have a car, that's 4 cars. And downstairs is 1 bedroom. And they say there's 2 people and they have 2 cars. It is absolutely impossible. As it stands now, 2 cars cannot pass on that road. 1 has to wait. The neighborhood is totally fearing what is going to happen if that is it goes and gets approved as a 2-family. All of the things that have been done to the house to make it a 2-family have already been done, are in place. It's not finished being built out as far as the deck in the back that was exceeded where the original the foundation is much taller than the foundation that was there. The house is much taller than the house that was there. It's a monster on a tiny, tiny lot. And I just encourage people to just take a ride by and see what can happen in their neighborhood, because we're all worried about it. The minute they have company or deliveries or anything, they've deemed us a private road. Thurston Road is a private road. Thurston Lane is a private road. We don't want to be private, but nobody wants to plow, the road, and the repairs are our responsibility. So it's just a fear that we're experiencing in real time. And I hate the whole thing is just too loosey-goosey. There's got to be a tighter restrictions on this stuff, and less, if you have it, you can do it kind of attitude. That's where we stand with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So 3 people have left their hands up after they've already spoken. And right now we have 12 people with their hands raised. So I just wanted to ask that you take down your hand if you forgot, so we can share the floor. We have 45 minutes left. And if we keep to 3 minutes, everyone should have a chance to talk. So thank you. Roseanne, welcome. Would you name and address, please?
Hi, thanks, Val. Roseanne Vidal, 24 Rowley Shore. I'm against both of these proposals. I feel I'm not going to be articulate here because it's on the spot, but let's start with the height. The height, and we live in Lanesville, and it's such a beautiful, magical place. You can walk around everywhere, and so many houses, regular, modest houses, have a view of the ocean. It's a spectacular, special place, and that will totally change. I feel the same for the rest of Cape Ann. I feel the same for downtown, around City Hall. Think of Boston. I know probably all of you remember the overpass at North Station, and then they took it down, and it was the first time that pavement had seen sunlight in decades. It was magical. And how long did it last? 20 years. Now it's under again. Think about like streetlights on Maplewood, because that's what's going to happen. We already don't have enough staff in the schools. The water and sewer is already, overextended. We can very quickly ruin our beautiful, beautiful place that we live. I don't know. That's my point. And one more thing I want to say is that, again, some people are going to be mad at me, but I think what this all comes down to is that there are some people who are going to make a lot of money from these changes. Why can't we just keep it the way it is, have it reviewed as it should be, and move on from there? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roseanne. Send my best to Mark. Thank you. Sam Poole. Name and address. Nice to hear from you, Sam.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Or good evening. Yes, Sam Poole, 19 Linwood Place in lovely Plum Cove. Thanks, Val. Thanks to all the other officials who are helping make this meeting happen. I appreciate it. I want to offer apologies for myself and maybe lots of other folks who you all dedicate a lot of time and energy volunteering for the city leadership roles or being employed in the city leadership roles. And we ask you to go out and lead and do these things, and we offer a little input over a space of years or decades. And then when you finally produce a product, we're here and give you grief. So my apologies for that. At least I'll speak for myself, not the others. But overall, okay with the housing production plan in terms of the lot sizes. The height I have an issue with. Someone else mentioned they have a view of the ocean. I have a view of the ocean from my home. But if the abutters were to put up higher homes, I would not have a view. So the height issue is big for me. It's been spoken about ad nauseum here, so I won't go into any detail other than to say that I'm concerned about the height, unless there's some sort of a coastal overlay or some sort of a view overlay. And I think Patty Page spoke eloquently about the provisions. I had the same notes pretty much, so I won't repeat myself, but what Patty Page said, I applaud and want to reiterate that and agree with her assessment. Really, the view and the character is why we're here. It's why I put up with a lot of cold winter. It's why I put up with a lot of the negatives of living here, and I hate to see that change appreciably. We've seen the view change over the years. Nature marches forward with brush and trees growing. And I remember used to be able to go past 988 Washington Street, the old Dyson homestead right above Plum Cove, and you could see an expansive view across the bay. And now there's barely a sliver of water. So between the homes and the vegetation, we're losing view on a regular basis. So anything that, the leadership of this town can do to not let man-made things get in the way, well, I would support us not blocking the view more with homes or portions of homes. One of the things that, you've mentioned affordable, both large A and small A, and it's not the purpose of this phone call. And I understand that, but really, if you're gonna have a discussion, and if the city and the community is gonna have a discussion on affordable housing, we really need to put some mental space into short-term rentals, app rentals like Airbnb and VRBO. I think they are changing the nature of the neighborhood more so than the physical availability of housing stock. So those are my statements. I have a few questions, and I apologize if the information was available elsewhere. Earlier on in the presentation, Sean Henry gave some numbers. And with regards to the R10s, R20s, R4080, well, that we have here in Lanesville, Ward 2, it's mostly 80 and 10 and some 20. What did you guys break down by ward, Ward 1, Ward 2? And if you did, I apologize for not seeing it. How much additional housing would each of those zones have up in Ward 1 and I'm sorry, Ward 4-1 and -2? And with that question, I yield.
Go ahead, Sean.
Basically, there's no easy way to divide up the districts among the wards without sort of, again, looking on Map Geo and basically guesstimating at that point about which ward contains what percentage of each of the districts. Basically, the assumption would be that R10, R20, which exist in every ward except for Ward 5, if you assume a pretty even distribution, excuse me, which could be the case. There might be slight variances here or there, but again, the larger districts, R40, R80, are entirely within Ward 5 and Ward 4, but and R30 is principally out in Magnolia, but R10 and R20 are spread throughout the city, and Map Geo doesn't allow a, I guess, political division of those districts.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at it now as we're talking.
Thank you.
If you figure out a way to do it, let me know, because I've been trying to figure out myself.
Thanks.
Me too.
Thank you so much, Sam. Tracy, I'm glad you came tonight.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Val, for keeping me informed, and thank you for this meeting. I like what everyone has said.
Tracy
I've actually learned a lot. I'm Tracy Ritchie, 47 River Road.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that I'm very concerned with these proposals. As it stands now, people with family homes can convert them. It's not an issue for them to convert them to 2 families. My family did it with our family home so that we could have the adult children rent from my parents. I mean, it happens all the time. And now as it stands, they can already do that. My concern is this will open the door to developers. And in particular, Sean had mentioned developing of Railroad Ave. Now, the Shaw's Plazas have been sold. You raise the height, you give rights of this and that. Who's to say they're not going to build X amount of units on the Shaw's Plaza on Railroad Ave for commuters to Boston? So you get the Boston crew in here and they commute back and forth. And I think people are confused about the affordable housing issue. This has nothing to do with affordable housing. People can charge whatever they want for rent. So I am opposed to these amendments. I think if people now with homes that want to convert them, they have the opportunity to do that. So I don't think it's necessary to make these amendments. I think it's opening the door for more development. I look at the Cameron's building and I'm not happy about that. I don't think it looks good, and I don't want Main Street littered with that kind of building. And there are retail spaces on the bottom, and I know one is filled with a realtor. The other 2 slotted to be used? Because that's another thing. You can build all you want, but if people aren't going to bring their businesses here, it's moot. I oppose this. I don't think it is in our best interest as a city, as a whole. And I agree with others who said that coastal building in height and blocking views is a concern, because we all enjoy this area. I was born and raised here. And we love this area. And part of that is the uniqueness of it, the small town feel of it. And if you open this up, you're going to open up a door, a Pandora's box for development. We can see it in Hilliard. And they say a studio apartment for $1,600 is affordable housing. how is that affordable? In my book, it's not. So people are confused thinking this will promote affordable housing. It won't. And people who want to have their elderly parents move in and make their home two-family, they can do that already. So I don't think that's an issue. And I just want to voice my opposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy.
Al, if I could just make one clarification
Yep,
from
go
what
ahead,
Tracy
Sean.
was saying, that yes, currently, if you are an existing single-family home and you want to convert it to a two-family home to bring in either your adult children or your elderly parents, Tracy's correct that you can do it, but you have to do that by special permit at this point if you're adding an exterior modification. If you're fortunate enough to be able to convert internally, you can do that as a matter of right, as long as you're on a compliant lot. But in terms of developers, this welcoming developers in, most developers aren't out there lining up to buy an existing single family home to convert it. The conversion process is really targeted at existing homeowners who want to convert their home. And that's the change.
Thank you, Sean. We have 91 people on the call. There's 6 still with hands up. One of those has already spoken. So let's continue so we can get to hear from everyone. Dave Rosen on the planning board. Thank you, Dave. Name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
David Rosen, 505 Washington Street in Gloucester and Riverdale. Also a member of the planning board, and I should say a dissenting member on 2 of the proposed amendments. I want to make 2 points, and then I have a couple of questions. One is that I think in the charts that have been presented at the P&D meeting and here tonight and the other ward meetings are misrepresenting something, which is that in the discussion, the potential, particularly the chart that is the potential change in development, the number of units, those columns should be added up so that we see what the total impact is of the number of units that potentially could be created here. It's something well over 2,000 units. And I don't think that enough discussion has been given to the impact of 2,000 potential units in Gloucester, given issues that we're dealing with about density, traffic, climate change, things like that. So that's one particular point. The other point I want to make is that while I understand that there's a sense that by increasing the number of units that could be built through one of these amendments, I don't think it really works that way. I think it's wishful thinking to think that just having more units is therefore going to make it more affordable for more people to live in Gloucester. That is driven, the demand for units here is driven by the market. Gloucester has many, many amenities. There are reasons that people want to be here, both from employment, from all of the physical beauty of this place. So most new units that are going to be built, if those are being built to be sold, are going to be sold at market rates. And they're going to, the value of those units is going to be set by the market, and it's going to be set to be as high as the market will allow. With regard to a question, and this is a question for both Sean and for Jane. As I understand it, if the zoning is changed, if these amendments go through and somebody needs to go for a special permit because the underlying zoning will now allow 35 feet or 2 units by right, won't the ZBA then look to the underlying zoning to say, this is what the zoning allows, therefore that's the new standard and it should be allowed? So the argument that's been made about this isn't really going to, it's only going to affect lots that are non-conforming lots now, I don't think really holds water. I agree with a number of the points that have been made here. The last question that I have, and this is for Val or for Tony, is does the city council, when it comes to a vote on this, does the city council have to vote on the entire slate at one time, either thumbs up, thumbs down, or are you going to vote on the amendments one by one? Because I think that makes a difference.
So I'm on P&D, and Jason Grow is still on our call, and he chairs P&D. I'm the vice chair, and we are taking up each amendment separately. So that's what
Thank
we'll
you.
be. So thank you,
Thank you
David.
all.
Appreciate it.
And Val, I don't know if you want me to answer
Sure.
this. Do you want me to answer the ZBA question?
No, I don't, because I think that we can answer that one offline. It's a long question, and now we have Ted hasn't spoken, Laura Harrington hasn't spoken, Linda McCarriston has not spoken, Jane Deering, and Ed and Amy. Everyone else has spoken. So if we can call those 5 folks in, that would be great, one at a time. Thank you, Jane Deering. Thank you. Jane, introduce yourself and your address, and it's nice to have you on the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Can you hear me?
You can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you. Jane Deering, 18 Arlington Street. That's the village of Annisquam. And thank you to all of you who give your service to the city. It's very valuable. I'll make it brief. I do want to agree with a number of points that Ed King made, and also just recently Dave Rosen. Higher height, well, Dave didn't speak about that, but higher height generally does involve a larger house. That may involve more people in it. I think the stress on services and certainly environmental concerns is something we really ought to be thinking about. More cars, perhaps with larger houses, more congestion, but more pollution from cars. We already know in Annisquam what our streets are like. They're just clogged. I wanted to also say that will increase more density in our villages. I've certainly witnessed that in Annisquam over the many years. I've been there 30 years. I know I'm a new kid on the block in Annisquam, haven't been there 400 years, but 30 years counts for something. I think that density ends up in less light, less air circulation, less privacy. And when we talk about views, yes, views to the water for those of us who are fortunate to have little peaks of the water, but there are other views to trees and to the fields and to the woods and to open areas of nature, which are also important. I did want to say that I have a property in Concord, Mass, and a property here in Santa Barbara, California, and I have noticed that the more you build, the more houses, the more rental units, that does not bring down the prices. So I think more data needs to come in on that when you say that, well, we're going to take a lot of stress by building more. That's a fallacy. I do want to mention Dave's point about this is of the same thing, Dave Rosen's point about the market. The market is definitely what determines price, either rental or sale. And then I think Sam Poole makes a great point in cautioning you to think about these rentals that could turn into Airbnbs, very short-term rentals. I know in Santa Barbara, we've tackled that. There's no such thing as anything less than I think it's a 90-day rental. And that has stopped a lot of converting rental units into nightly Airbnbs. I have a few other points, but I'll send them in a letter. And again, on the water views, sometimes your water view is not taken away by an abutter doing something. I live about 4 houses away from a large house that has affected, when it went up, sliced off some of my view over to Wheeler's Point. So we need to think about that. And we can't always assume that someone who wants to renovate is going to consider what it does to others. Thanks. Thank you all
Thank
so
you
much.
Jane. I'd just like to mention that Tracy O'Neill, who is our Ward 2 City Councilor, is also on the call, and she's a third member of P&D. So let's continue with the hand raises, and I believe Tracy does have her hand up. But let's continue with the folks that have had their hands up and that I've announced. So Linda McCarriston, thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie, and everyone present tonight. And also, thank you, everyone who's attended all of these meetings. I would like to reaffirm the obvious, which is to say that what you are all contributing to this conversation, these are not feelings and they're not opinions. They are, by and large, hard data, sometimes given to us by experts, citing their authorities, and at other times given to us by residents, citing their experiences. I would like to add to that accumulation of data a fact about height, which is that when I first began attending meetings regarding zoning in Gloucester, maybe 6 years ago, the only ordinance that was used was 183, and it's in the use ordinances. And everyone in my group was trying to figure out how we could go and perform emotionally for the city council the way we were supposed to do, to beg daddy, please, daddy, it's my family, it's this, it's that. Someone, a lawyer came along and said, oh, that's not the right ordinances at all. The right ordinances are in section 3. That's the dimensional section. And then 316 is where it says that our view is protected. It doesn't mean that you have the right to an empty lot between you and the ocean. It means that the person who's going to build a house in front of you has the obligation to restrict himself to the existing ordinance height. That's all. And to say, as has been said over and over again, FEMA made me do it, is another ridiculous thing that must be corrected here. Because as I've said, I know, because Paul Lundberg said it 50 times, that FEMA has nothing, it's a federal agency. It can't tinker with our zoning ordinances any more than the state can. They're part of our home rule. So they can't, I mean, Governor Baker has done everything he could to tamper with our ordinances in the Act 358 by reducing the majority of the, from a supermajority to a simple majority for any of these desirable to him or to MAPC outcomes. But it's clear to me that these did not come from us. It was clear to me the minute I saw them, they did not line up with the language that they were nestled in. I called Greg immediately, said this language, it's BS. That's what I said. I didn't mean to be insulting, but it smelled, didn't have anything to do with what was being proposed. And the following meeting, I came back and said, I'm so sorry, Greg. I finally figured it out. I discovered the MAPC, the Municipal Area Production Council, and I found where all of this comes from. And I did. And that is still the answer. And the fact of the matter is that Greg estimates something like 3,400 new units of housing in his charts, and we are required to produce 2,270 new units of family housing by the MBTA TOD. If we go through with any of this zoning or these zoning changes, we will be throwing ourselves under the bus. Only the bus is a train. We will be throwing ourselves under the bus. I agreed with those who said, I mean, I agree with just about everything that's been said. No need to repeat it. But I
Okay.
want to stress, don't do it.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. Grace, we've got Ed and Amy. We've got Laura Harrington, Ted Rosenfinch, and Peggy. Let's cover those, and let's everyone try to keep to 3 minutes. Grace, if you can let us know if there's if we're exceeding that, that would be great. I want to be able to share the floor with everybody that's on this call, and we're getting to the
Counselor.
end of our 2 hours.
Counselor,
Yes, Grace, go
are you
ahead.
able to hear my alarm when it goes off?
Not really.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Ted, would you introduce yourself and your address?
Yes, happy to. My name's Ted Von Rosenving of 65 Norwood Heights. That's in Annisquam. I have an unobstructed view of the water. I'm lucky. I am concerned about the development along the water and raising the height. And I also want to say I appreciate what you do. I just finished chairing a commission in Connecticut for the last 10 years, so I know it's a lot of work, and thick skin is required. I'm also a professional engineer, civil engineer, registered in Massachusetts, and I have worked on the waterfront projects extensively, including being on the Connecticut committee on sea level rise. Served on that. So I would like you to think about the law of unintended consequences. Anytime you make a change, there are risks. And I think you're hearing about a lot of those risks tonight. And I would encourage you to write those risks down and say, how are we going to manage that? Is that a risk worth taking? What are the consequences of that risk? And I'll give you an example. My neighbors ask me to trim my trees every now and then. I have good relations with my neighbors, and I do it, and it helps their view. If I put 5 feet on my house, I think one of the unintended consequences, we're going to damage some relationships in our communities. So that's disruptive. So that's a risk. Another one is, I hate to eat up all let's say you've got a building that's down near the waterfront or a yacht club or something like that, and you've got a very compelling reason to raise it up for sea level rise. I'd hate to eat up the 5 feet that we go before some commission and say we need, or that person needs, to raise their house up, and they got a good reason, when they've already used 5 feet with the height that they've gone to 35 feet. Now it's 40. It's an unintended consequence. So I've heard a lot of good comments that I agree with tonight that are not in favor, and certainly the development along the waterfront and the increase in the height. I would encourage you to consider those as very real risks and think about what the consequences are that may not be apparent right now. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you for doing what you're doing nonetheless.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Oh, how are you, Amy? Nice to see you. I don't know if it's Ed or Amy.
Ed's in the other room. So this is Amy Shapiro Kesnoha from 83 High Street in Lanesville. And I think this is, a wonderful forum you've created, and I appreciate all of the thought and effort that's gone into everybody's comments and input. I've certainly learned a lot this evening, so I appreciate that. I don't have a lot to contribute other than just to say that, just as we have concern to factor in environmental impact when we're developing and building, and that we have concern for wetlands and wetlands constrictions, I think it's really clear that also for the good of the whole community, we need to have water view guidelines, and anybody wanting to make changes in their property perhaps should take on the responsibility of including with their proposal a water view impact statement, which can be verified with the neighbors, so that everybody gets on the same page about what is desirable. Because the bottom line, from everybody's concurred with this, in one way or another that your view, and I don't have a water view, so I'm speaking sympathetically here. Your view is both a tangible and an intangible asset because it affects your quality of life, which is intangible, and it affects your property value, which is very tangible. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm glad that you you came onto the call tonight. Thank you. Laura Harrington, name and address. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Laura Harrington, 505 Washington Street. I have a question for the committee as well as a thank you to you all for the work that you've done. Has there been an environmental impact study done of the additional building on our community? Can anyone on the call answer that?
Jane, I'll let you take that if you're able.
No.
No, I honestly don't understand how in 2022 we can be having this conversation about more building when we know that the environmental impact of more is desperately a problem. I like the metaphor that it's not a bus coming at us, it's a train. The recent storm that we were very lucky did not hit us as hard as it could have. There was no beach left at Good Harbor, if any of you were there. The Good Harbor parking lot did not have a skim of water on it. It was flooded to many inches, if not feet. Roads were closed, and we missed it pretty well. This level of development is dangerous for our community and for the environment. And I do not believe you can go forward with these proposals until you have looked at and evaluated what this impact is on a very fragile coastal community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura, I would encourage you to go on the community development website and you can read up on our municipal vulnerability plan and all of the plans that the city is tasked to do, and some of them which we are doing very aggressively. And it just shows you kind of the history of the importance of these environmental issues. So sometimes people don't know all that good work that's being done because we don't do a lot to advertise it, but it would be great for you to spend the time, and feel free to give me a call because I've been part of that team on the MVP group. So
I'll do that. Thanks for mentioning that, Val.
thank you. Okay, we're getting down to the final hands here. And right now we have Peggy, and I think everyone else has spoken. So Peggy, if you would be the last call, and then we can wrap up unless
Great.
someone has a question. So thank you.
Thank you, Val. This voice doesn't sound like a Peggy, but it's her husband, Andy. So we are Peggy and Andy Calkins at 954 Washington Street, proud residents of Ward 4. And glad in some ways to be the last ones here. I'm just going to offer up a really fast synthesis of what we've heard tonight, because we've all heard a fair amount of alarm expressed here. I'm particularly speaking about the provisions about the height limit removal and the by right abilities to build. And I've been sort of just carefully listening and taking notes, and the arguments seem to fall into three categories. One having to do with quality of life and worries about congestion and pressure on town and city services and so on. The second one having to do with ecosystem issues. Laura just spoke pretty well to those, and thank you to the city for doing all the work that you're doing. But yeah, pressure on resources, water, power, climate change, shoreline, rising water levels. And the third one has to do with local character and the perspectives that you've been hearing tonight from current residents. We're hearing lots and lots of passion about being good stewards for what we all enjoy here. It took Gloucester 400 years as of next year to get us to this moment, and 10 or 20 years of a policy that doesn't firmly stay committed to that spirit of stewardship, could upset all of that. And so I just encourage the council, the ZBA, everyone to hear these voices. And as I know you do, take that responsibility of stewardship seriously so that, 400 years from now, there's a community that looks somewhat reminiscent to the one that we all enjoy today. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. So I think it's a good time to wrap up. I don't see any new hands, and I appreciate that because I want to make sure that we can kind of debrief and let people know where we were going in the upcoming weeks. So like I said earlier, this meeting has, Tony's been good enough to offer to scribe this, and that will be submitted. It will be in the packet for our meeting on February 16th, as will all the other ward meeting summaries. All of the Zoom recordings are posted now on the City Council website. There's one-stop shopping to all the documents that you might want to see, including our meetings at P&D on January 5th, on 19th, all of the recordings, all the minutes, presentations, Zoom meetings, etc. And I think from that, you can really go back and revisit some of this conversation, but proactively, we ask you, if you have questions, please send them to either our city clerk, Joanne Sinos, jsinos@gloucester-ma.gov, and ask her to share them with all members of the council. If you have comments, same. And specifically, if you have questions that you want us to answer with Greg Catamatori at our meeting on February 16th at Planning and Development, send them to Jason Grow, JGROW @gloucester-ma.gov. And we're going to make sure that those questions get answered. So on that day, we will just be debriefing, looking through all of the comments that people have made, answer questions, reviewing all these notes, and then deciding if we're ready as a standing committee to vote. And if we're not, we'll have another meeting. Right now, the public hearing is scheduled for February 22nd, 2022. And we might continue that if we are not voting on the 16th. So if you're interested in this, stay abreast of what's going on. I've told you where all the information is. You can all call me. I am absolutely grateful that so many of you were on this call. At one point, we had over 100. And I hope that you feel that as Zoom as our only possible way to really have these types of communications right now, that this was a beneficial meeting. We've listened. Counselors that weren't here will listen, and will continue to listen to all members of the public in our wards and throughout the whole community. And from the bottom of my heart, I'd just like to thank Tony Gross, at-large counselor who lives here in Ward 4, to be partnering with me on today's meeting. Thank you, Tony. And Sean Henry for all your leadership, and Jane Remsen as well for your leadership on the planning board. Sometimes being on the planning board and or elected officials can be kind of stressful and crazy, but you totally are appreciated. So thank you for all your volunteerism. And to Grace Poirier, who was our Assistant City Clerk, for helping us with the Zoom technology tonight. So without further ado, we don't have to do a motion to adjourn because this is an informal ward meeting, but thank you. And
thank you, Val.
Yep, thanks,
appreciate it.
Val.
All right. Good night, all.
Thanks very much. Good night,
See you
folks.
later. Thank you.